simple sentences last time, and you seem to have picked up fairly well. Only thing is there is something which we call as prepositions. So like, ich fahre morgen. Here, at 10 a.m. is then going to be 10 Uhr. So usually when we're talking about time, we then say 10 Uhr. We're going to use the word
Okay.
When shall we meet? 10 Uhr. So this is then what you are then going to be there. Now, regarding this one, why not zu Hause is when you are already at home, then you will say ich bin zu Hause. Okay, so when you are going home, then you're going to say ich gehe nach Hause. So it is then going to be nach Hause is when you're going home, and if it is then when you are at home, then you say ich bin zu Hause. So two words which are then nach and zu, they're going to go one with the other. Okay, so we are fliegen über den Sommer mit dem Flugzeug nach Florida. All this is fine, okay, but don't try avoiding putting this homework stuff in this. Okay, this is pretty good what you have done. Present tense, simple past tense, and the present perfect. Okay. Now, yesterday the previous session, we have learned about the flexibility of the German language, where we are able to then take elements and then happily move them around, and how it is then possible. The next step is what is then going to be called as creation of complex sentences.
Hello, can you hear me?
Complex sentences are then going to come into existence when we are going to join two or more sentences. So
hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. In my homework, I have a couple of more questions.
Okay. Tell me.
Page number 5.
Hmm. Okay.
Can you scroll down?
Okay.
So for that line, gefahren.
There are some where it is going to be dual. There are certain verbs where it is then going to be dual. It is possible to use hat. So like even schlafen, for example. Now here, where did you find this one? It should be, why are we using hat here? I know you see here, steht as man muss das one. And where is this particular sentence?
No, that above sentence is from the exercises what we have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically certain verbs are there which can be dual. Like for example, a schlafen and fahren. So these things can sometimes it can happen that depending on the situation you can say ich habe sehr spät geschlafen. I have slept very late. So it is not possible for us to say that form, and so also with the gefahren. So there are a couple of exceptions, and this happens to be one of them. Now, where is this one that you're referring to?
I think this is okay. Man is man means you.
Man.
Yeah. So this is from the reading.
Man is not you. That is, man is not you. It means one.
Okay.
Man soll nicht rauchen. One should not smoke.
Okay.
It's going to be in that way. So you're going to find that it is going to be with a single N and with on this one.
Okay.
No. Stattfinden is going to be one compound verb, meaning to say, like we have, as I've told you, two words forming together to make this one. To take place. Stattfinden. So,
Okay.
so when we are then using, even in the case of English, we then say the wedding is taking place at the Hotel Taj. So we then say die Hochzeit findet an das Hotel Taj statt. So it is then going to go at the end.
Okay.
Now, how does this translate? The summer takes place. So it's going to be stattfinden, taking place. Is a single response. Sometimes when you join something with something else, is then it is going to find, you're going to find that takes place. So now, then anything else?
In winter for
Stellt
Darmstadt.
sich der Winter. Okay. Sich stellen. See, there is, when we talk about sich, it is referring to something which we shall call as a reflexive pronoun. Okay, so reflexive pronoun is where when you have a verb and on the front side and the back side you have the same pronoun, it is then going to be called as reflexive. How does it happen? In the case of English, for example, we are then going to say, I enjoyed myself at the party last evening. Okay. Enjoyed is the verb, I and myself. He fell down and hurt himself. He hurt himself. She cut herself. So you're going to get words which are then coming, the self is then sich, or this one is going to be equivalent of that. So here it is then going to be the winter then sets in by itself. You see, unlike in the case of German and of English, German is then going to be using the word, this reflexive pronoun in many, many ways. So let's take a small side lesson over here. You are then going to have, there are going to be different forms which you're going to have. So now for ich, now then ich, du, sie, sie, es, wir, ihr, and sie. So these are the pronouns which we have got. Okay, now here each of them is going to have a form unique to itself most of the time. Some of them share one form. These are then going to be the ones which are going to come here. So like here, we are going to use either mich or mir. You're then going to have dich, or you're then going to have dir. Sie is then going to have sich, and this is then going to have also sich, and this is also then going to have sich, and es is also then going to have a sich. Then wir is then going to have uns, and ihr is then going to have euch, and sie is then back to the sich again. So these are the forms that you are going to get. Unlike in the case of English, there is no comparison simply. Basically, we tend to use this reflexive pronoun in surprising ways. So now when you say, for example, if you take in the morning, I brush my teeth. So you're going to say, ich putze mir die Zähne. Ich putze mir die Zähne. I brush my teeth myself. Okay, ich dusche mich. I shower myself. I shower myself. So there is a, probably they feel better saying it like that. So now there is an ich dusche mich, du duschest sich, and so forth. You're going dish and dir. This is then going to be the forms that you are going to be using in the case of this. So here's sich. Now in the third person, sie, and es. Winter, when I'm referring to winter, it is going to be masculine. Der Winter. So in this situation, what it means is that the winter sets in. Einstellen is then set in. So
Okay.
if you then, so look at the end of the sentence, you will then find that there is then going to be some kind of a extra one. So that is then a splittable type. So einstellen. So come here, and then when you are looking in this one, you will find that it is going to be sich einstellen. So you can put down sich einstellen is set, sich einstellen. So now is then going to be set in. Winter sets in. So winter sets in, or winter arrives.
Okay.
So this is the form that the sich is mandatory, and wherever the sich comes, it is automatically going to the accusative form, which is then going to come over there. Okay. Now, so this is as far as your queries are concerned. You have any more queries?
No, that's all.
That's it for the time being. Yep. All right. So now we are coming to the part of the sentences for sentence formation, where we are going to be joining 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences together. How does this then happen? It is then going to be, what happens is that we are going to say, let us say, for example, I am driving, I am drinking a cup of coffee. Now I can say I'm driving and drinking a cup of coffee. So when I have two different activities, I can put two sentences together, putting an and over there to say that it is happening simultaneously. Sometimes you can then say, I speak English, I speak German. So I speak English and German. So when I'm putting the and, it is then going to be a particular type of joining. So we call these as conjunctions. So you're going to then have two types of conjunctions. One is then going to be known as a coordinating conjunction. So you've had an example of one just like this. So in this kind of a sentence, nothing happens to the main sentence, whatever sentences we are using in the example. They're going to be both. Even if I look after the joining also, it is going to be clear. I am driving the car and drinking coffee. So the I am drinking coffee. The I am is the only one which has been taken out, but the sequence of everything else remains identical. Then you have a separate one. You have got, which is then going to be, for example, I would love to come to your party. I have to work late in the office. Now what will come here in between? But. So you're going to then say, I would love to come to your party, but I have to work late in the office. Until that means at the same time we're giving the excuse why I'm not coming. Okay, so now Raval Aina and in Rala. So this is also then going to be considered as a coordinating conjunction. Then we have something which we are then going to call as a subordinating conjunction. So how does a subordinating conjunction work? In a subordinating conjunction, when, say, for two sentences are there, I am not going to the office today, I have a stomachache. Okay. I'm not going to the office today because I have a stomachache. Okay, now if I rendering separate cheesing in juice, suppose now I put the because along with the second sentence and then I try to look at it. The first part is going to be remaining having the same meaning. I'm not going to the office today. Comma, because it is raining. Now, because it is raining doesn't stand, it doesn't make sense by itself. It is inadequate, it is incomplete. It requires the first part of the sentence to be there before it is able to then make a full meaning. So what do we call this? We call this as a dependent clause, or we're going to call this as a subordinate clause. So one more statement before we actually come down. Whenever you are joining two sentences, they no longer remain sentences. They are then going to be called as a clause. So usually we're going to then have some kind of a comma, or we're going to have some kind of a conjunction coming up and then joining them. So whenever you see that kind of a thing, it's going to be called as clauses. So here, this is then going to be the one. German subordinate or dependent clauses. So this examples we have just seen over here. So you then see here, see, I don't know. No, he arrives today. So two sentences. Now we are joining them together with a when. I don't know, and when he arrives today. So when you're giving this kind of a statement, when he arrives today, so when he arrives today, after putting this one, it stops making sense. It requires the first part before it's able to do the second. The same thing in the case of German, you're going to say, ich weiß nicht, er kommt heute an. Now, notice what is happening in English. It simply has a conjunction. It doesn't do anything else over here. But in German, what happens? The active verb moves to the end of the sentence. So ankommen is then going to be to arrive. So it then says that to arrive. So when he arrives today, when he today arrives, and it is then going to, this arrives is then going to move to the end of the sentence in the case of the German. So this is typically how a subordinate clause is then going to happen. So you are going to join two sentences, they become clauses. One clause, the first clause will remain like a normal sentence with the verb in its position. This subordinate clause, the verb is going to go to the end of the sentence. So, like in the case of formation of simple sentences, every rule that is then coming is then going to be related to the position of the verb. So, in one clause, it is in its normal place, second position. In the second one, when I'm using a subordinating conjunction, it is going to go to the, if I'm using a coordinating one, then it will continue in its normal second position. The V2 rule will continue. Suppose, ich weiß nicht, aber kommt heute an, but he arrives today. So something like that. It's a nonsensical sentence, but the idea is to give you an example if I were to change it into a coordinating conjunction. Okay. Moving onward. So this is then going to, what we then come here. So we then come here and then we are going to bring this. Now what I'm going to show you is something which you are not going to find in any grammar book. This is something which I do for the explanation of my students. We are going to call this as a type 1. Why? Because you're having a main clause, then you're having a subordinate clause. But nobody says that you cannot begin the sentence with a subordinate clause. You can do that also. No rule prevents you from then using the subordinate clause in the first place. So, first we consider the first one. So in the case of the first one, what is then going to happen? We can then make a formula out of this. We're then going to say main clause, comma, then subordinating conjunction, subordinating clause, and the conjugated verb or the active verb at the end of the sentence. This is then going to be the formula which we will be using over here. Now, we then have said, as I have said, you are perfectly at freedom to then go ahead and bring your, so you're perfectly at freedom to then take the subordinating conjunction at the beginning and then moving the main clause to the backside. Is everything then going to remain as it is? Apparently not. It is not going to remain as it is. It is then going to go into what we shall now call as the type 2. This is then going to go into the type 2. Why do I call it type 2? Because the subordinating is coming in the first and the main clause is coming at the back. Okay. So, when this happens, what happens is that it is going to begin with a verb. So you're going to have two, this is ending with a verb, and this is going to begin with a verb. So for the first time in this one, you're going to find two verbs, sending active verbs, sitting side by side. So this is then going to be, we can make a formula out of this in this manner. What happens is, this one, whether it is in the front or whether it is in the back, it is going to be identical. There is no change to it. That means that the verb is going to be found at the end of the clause. So now I put a comma. What happens is, I then have to bring the conjugated verb, and then I'm going to put the rest of the sentence. So this is then what has happened in the case of this one. These two types which you have now then had a look at are very much reversible, in the sense I can make from a type 2 I can make a type 1. From a type 1 I can make into a type 2. So let us now attempt this type 2 using this formula over here. So according to the formula, the second part of the sentence is not going to change. So I can happily copy this, bring it down over here, paste it. Now, since this is the beginning of the sentence, we capitalize it. So that is the first major change which is going to happen. I then put a comma. Now, when I'm bringing it, the main clause is going to come down, but what is going to happen? The conjugated verb is going to start with that. So in this one, ish, weiß nicht, what is then going to be the verb?
Weise.
Is then going to be weiß. So you are now going to then say weiß ich nicht. The rest of the sentence, nothing will change. It will come in the same sequence. So this habit of the Germans of moving to the beginning of the sentence, to the end of the sentence, this is something which English people have difficulty in understanding. Okay, so they find that a little bit confusing actually, but there is a certain logic to it, and once you follow the logic, there is going to be no problem in this one. Now, coming to the second one, if you're going to convert into a type 1, so it's very much possible. So what should I then do over here? Can you now tell me?
Sie
Yes.
bemerkte sofort die glühende Hitze.
Yeah, so she noticed the intense heat. So rest of it is then going to be identical. I don't need to write it. So this is just going to come down as it is, copy it, bring it down over here and paste it. There you are. And you're going to put the comma. And this will come as it stands. It's not going to have any change. So whether this is going to be at the back or whether it is going to be in the front, it's going to be the same, except that this will not be capitalized. It will be with a small a. So this is as simple as that. So the complex sentence formation is now clear to you. Okay. Here I just need to add one more thing. Nothing prevents this one from having multiple sentences working together in a similar fashion. So you can have one main clause followed by 3 subordinating clauses. You can have two main clauses with 2 subordinating clauses. So there is no rest to the, there's no limit to what are the combinations which are going to be possible. So this is then going to be the first part of it. We've been talking about subordinate conjunctions for some time now. What the dickens is going to be a subordinate conjunction? There are about 22 of them. There are about 22 of them. Plus, you're going to have 7 of them are then going, an additional 7, which are going to be the interrogative words. Interrogative words like wie, wo, wann, welche, warum, and so forth. All this is also then going to be coming in the category of subordinating conjunctions. We've just now dealt with one such one where we have then said, wann heute ankommt, when he is arriving today. So we used a wann over there. So this is then going to be the 22 plus 7, 29. But then we have what are called as coordinating conjunctions. So let's have a look. When we said conjunctions, if you remember when we were learning about vocabulary requirements, I then said that conjunctions are going to be around 35 to 40. So this is now how this is then working out. So the remaining ones, we are now seeing 29 of them, 22 plus 7, 29. Now we're going to have a look at some more and see what then happens over here. Look at the third column. This is all about this one. So now you have already been using German for a few days now, a couple of weeks. So here, what do you think would then come over here? I speak English, I speak German. When you are then trying to join them, what is the one which you use?
Ich spreche English und Deutsch.
Yes, it's then going to be und is then going to be the one which is coming as a conjunction over here. Right. Now, so order is then going to be there. Very well done. Absolutely wonderful. You're an amazing person. Now, come to this one over here. Leave this for the time being. It requires a certain amount of extra explanation. We then come down over here. I have a car. I don't like to drive. So what would then come in between?
But.
I
don't know.
You are then going to use a but. I have a car, but I don't like to drive.
Yeah.
So when I'm using a but, what would be the word for but in German?
That's what I don't know. In English, I know that it is but.
It's going to be aber.
Aber, okay.
You're then going to say aber. So aber, ich fahre nicht gern. Okay, so then come down to the fifth one. In the fifth one, we are then saying here, I don't ride a car, I ride a bicycle. So it is then going to be rather. So rather annapadu, in the case of English, in German you have 3 choices. You can then say er, you can then say lieber, or you can also then say sondern. Okay, so you're going to have choices over here. Now, when we come to this one, what is then going to happen? We learn German, dash, it is interesting. What would normally be the one which we would fill in over here?
And we can also use and it is interesting.
Nah. And is not going to explain why we are learning German. So this is then going to be, we learn German because it is interesting.
Okay.
I play football because it is fun. Okay, so we're going to then do this. I eat food because I am hungry. So we're using it is then going to come. Now, but if you notice over here, I find that the verb is not coming at the last as it is supposed to be doing in the case of a subordinating one. So normally when I use it because I'm supposed to be having it. So what should I then do here? This is where learning to use the tools which are given to you. So one of the tools given to you is going to be Lingway. Now look at how it is then going to come. So we're then going to say because. Come down and then we're going to then say because. Now when I write because, I find that while, da and then are turning up. So I've got three choices. Now when I then click on this one and I come here and then what do I then find? I find that because it rains. So while as rain. So if I'm using a while, I find that the verb is coming at the last. So this is going to be a subordinating conjunction. It forces the verb, active verb, to go to the last. Then here in the case of da, also I find that da, sie mit daunen gefüttert ist. The active verb ist is then coming at the end of the sentence, also indicating that this is going to be a subordinating conjunction. Now we come to the last one then, and we then find that this one is not having the same problem. So now I'm not where this unnecessary extensions are then being given. So we close this one over here, and then when we see Ishva, I was not worried as the situation is not so hopeless. Trostlos is then going to be hopeless. Now, here, what do I notice? The verb is inside the sentence. It is not going to the outside. Den die Lage ist nie so trostlos. So trostlos is then going to be a description. It's an adjective. Here it is. The verb is inside. Ist is then the active one. So what does it mean? Then is going to be a coordinating conjunction. So when I want to use one which is coordinative, I have to then make use of this particular one. So now we are going to stop this, come here, and now what is it you're going to then write? You're then going to write then. Okay, so there are nuances within the language, and you are learning some of these things, how they are then happening. Okay, so this is then going to be how you are then going to get this. Okay, so you understood things so far, I would guess. Okay, now all that we need to do is we need one more, we need to learn a little bit. There are another two topics, which is three topics basically, which are left out and which we need to then cover. And you will be almost at a B1 level. So it's going to be, you are progressing at an incredibly rapid, this one, because you are doing well. I'm also pushing, and then I'm giving you more, making you do things which normally go up to a B1 level. Okay, so let us then continue over here. Now, when we are then coming with this one, we are going to then find that, hey, we got something which is, if you remember when we were talking about pronouns, I said that there are going to be multiple kinds of pronouns. So what are the different kinds of pronouns that you are then going to touch upon? So first one we said is the personal pronoun. So we learned about ich, du, sie, es, etc. So there is the personal pronoun. The next one is then going to
possessive pronoun.
The possessive pronoun is then what we had then learned about.
Mine, thine.
Yeah, meine, deine, seine, and so forth. And today we have then touched upon the reflexive pronoun, where we have then said it is then going to have where it is going to, where because this usage of the self is going to be the reflexive pronoun. And the last one that we would be dealing with, which is required until you are able to reach a B1 level, is then going to be relative pronouns. Now, when this relative pronoun is used only in the case of this subordinating conjunctions, you're going to have a relative subordinate conjunction. So it's going to be a variety which is then going to come up over there. So here we go. This is then going to be the relative conjunction. So when it is then going to be then coming here, another type of subordinate clause is the relative clause, which is introduced by the relative pronoun, as in the previous English sentence. So both, what is this one? Here we then come, and this is the example of what it is then going to be. Das ist die Dame, that is the lady, whom we saw yesterday. Die wir gestern sahen. I'm now making use of an article to indicate a pronoun. So it's then going to be die. So this is then going to be format which is coming here. So relative one, the difference is the verb goes to the end for sure, but unlike in the case of type 1 and type 2, you are not going to be able to, this is then going, it's not going to be reversible. So unlike in this one, you cannot take the main clause and move it to the back side or the subordinate clause to the front side. It is always going to remain identical over here. So you're clear about this so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
But do we have only one relative pronoun, or we have many?
Beg your pardon?
Do we have many relative pronouns like this die, or
no,
depends on the person?
Die, der, and das.
Okay.
So the three articles which we are using are then going to be the one. So if instead of here it was a woman, so instead of the woman, you are then going to say, oh, that is the man whom we saw in the market yesterday. So you're going to then say, das ist der Mann, den wir gestern sahen. So you're going to use a form of that over there. So I told you there is something called as cases, and we shall be touching upon it. In the meantime, I will just put a small this one over here, side lesson, which will hopefully then keep you going for the time being so that it answers your questions before you are raising the question. So the first thing is, an article in the case of German, as the English language, is then going to be, articles are then going to be only two. You're going to have a and you're then going to have the. The primary function of the article in the case of English is then number one, it is going to help us in identifying the noun. Identification of the noun. This is what it is primarily going to do. At the same time, it is also then the two articles are going to tell us, is it going to be an indefinite noun or is it going to be a definite noun? So this is the function that it is then performing. When it comes to the case of the German, you are interested in also knowing the gender. So because I want to know the gender, I'm then going to say the two articles are going to become five. I'm going to say ein, I'm going to say eine, and then I'm going to then say der for masculine, die for the feminine, and das for the neutral. Now, when we are then coming again to the question of the fourth function which we have not spoken about, but which we will be covering eventually, then what happens is that number 4 is for the case. So the cases are then going to provoke another outburst. You're then going to have einen, einer, einem, eines. Then you're going to have der, den, dem, and des. So the first confusion for many English speakers you're going to have about 13 articles in total, unlike the 2 articles which are there in the case of the German language. So till such time as I'm going to explain to you, for purposes of simplification, oversimplification if you wish, you are going to treat all of this which is beginning with an E as an indefinite article, and then the one on the right side you will then treat it as a definite article. What it does, how does it solve the case of gender, how does it tell me about the case? As we learn, you will then also be able to distinguish between them. For the time being, this is only an awareness, because you're going to come across this in many a situation. So just remember the endings. So EN, EM, ER, ES, these endings. So you're going to then find certain things which don't make sense to you, but which will then be, if you know the cases, it is then going to be clear. So this is then going to be, in the future, it is a side lesson. Don't take this as part of the main lesson. It is not actually meant to be at this. It's just for information's sake. Now, let's put this away. So we had then exercised with a little bit of this one over here, the Zeitangabe. Now we're going to go down and we're going to try number 14 and number 13. So here is then going to be something which we can now try out. So what is this then going to be? So here, you are then having a conjunction over here, and then you have the rest of the sentence which is then coming over here. Now, how would you then rearrange this? So now I want you to rearrange this, and you're going to then tell me, according to what you have now learned, what is it that you understand, and how are you then going to put this? So I'm putting it in the chat box for you. Here it is. Please go ahead, use a notepad, take it out, split it into the components, rearrange things, and where necessary, you do the conjugation also. Don't use it as it is going to come. So please begin. You will run into a certain amount of difficulty because there is one aspect of verbs which we have not covered, and let's see if you're able to figure it out. If you then have difficulty, I will take a side lesson for that. Sayonara. Now, here is the formula in front of you so that you don't get confused. Yeah. Ich muss machen meine Hausaufgaben jetzt, weil ich will ins Kino später. No. Okay, so there are certain things that we still have to learn. For today, I will just correct the sentence and you can have a look. So here, this is first and foremost, this is what you have then offered. Okay, now, is then going to have the comma over here. Now, first one, up till here, this is correct. Now, second one, when you're using a modal, this is called as a modal verb. I have to, or I must. I have to make. When you are talking about this one, in English, what are you saying? I have to make, or I have to do. I have to. You're using an infinite form, to do, to make, to whatever, the to form is being used. This infinite form must move. In German, two verbs will never sit side by side. It has to move to the end. The only situation where it happens is active verbs sitting side by side is where you are using in a subordinating conjunction situation. There you are going to find it. So, first one, machen has to go. There are two verbs, müssen and machen. So, rightfully, yes, ich muss. Now, the next one, jetzt, is then going to be now. It is an element of time. It is an element of time. So, according to what we have then learned, we're then going to say, ich muss jetzt. Now, meine Hausaufgaben machen. The machen is the infinitive form, to make. Okay. So, ich muss jetzt meine Hausaufgaben machen, weil. Now, when I'm using while, what have I told you? Active verb has to go to the end of the sentence. Now, here also, I've got two verbs, wollen and gehen. Wollen is going to be one of the modal verbs again. And this modal verb we have not covered. So, but you have used it correctly. So, while ich später is again going to be an element of time, while ich später place ins Kino gehen will. So, will is the actual one which we want. And the gehen is then, I want to go. Because I want to go, want is, will is going to be want. So, want and then to go. So, it's then going to be in this form that you're going to get it over here. Right, we stop over here for today. And when we get back again, we should be talking about more varieties of verbs. So, we're going to have splittable varieties of verbs. How do you deal with it? And we're going to talk about modal verbs, and we shall then be, after that, we shall then do exercises with this compound, called the complex verb system. So, we shall then be having a look at these in the future. Right, we stop over here. Let's say bye to you, have a nice day, and we shall meet up again the day after tomorrow.
Okay, yeah.
All the best then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.